also held a set of car keys and a purse complete with ID, cards and cash. The technician ran out to the visitors' car park. A family sedan matching the make on the keyring was one of the few remaining vehicles. Zoe's father's phone rang a couple of kilometres away, in the foyer of the Marily Valley's Better Italian restaurant. He'd waved off his own parents in a taxi and was now paying the meal bill while chatting to the owner and her husband, who both remembered him from school. He was showing them pictures of Zoe, his firstborn, and already 6 weeks old on Sunday. He could hardly believe it. And the owner was insisting he accept a celebratory bottle of sparkling wine on the house, when his screen lit up with the call. The restaurant was a 15-minute walk from the festival grounds. The restaurant owner broke the speed limit that she herself had campaigned for to drive him there in just over 3, slamming on the brakes right outside the main gate. He ran from there past the closed and darkened stalls all the way to his daughter's side. The site was searched. Zoe's mother, 39-year-old Kim Gillespie, was not found. Volunteers were assembled and the area was combed again. Then the car park, then the vineyards on either side. The pram had been parked facing east, towards the back of the festival site and the overflow exit. Beyond the exit lay bushland and a small track that led only one way. The search moved along that track, following it all the way down to the reservoir. Then along the broad leisure trail that circled the water, empty at that time of night of walkers and service vehicles, to the highest point along the rugged embankment, a steep rocky ledge known locally as the Drop. Far below, the reservoir stretched deep and wide. 2 days later they found a shoe. Kim Gillespie's white trainer, waterlogged and streaked with sediment, was recovered more than a kilometre to the east, jammed in the dam's filters. Specialist divers were called to broach the crack in the base at the centre of the natural reservoir. They went as deep into the cavernous void as they could, while searchers swept the perimeter on foot and in ranger vehicles, and volunteers combed the shallows in their weekend boats. The search continued for another week, then 2, then slowed and finally stopped altogether, with promises to return when the water level dropped. Spring turned into summer and autumn. Zoe grew out of her pram, took her first steps, needed shoes of her own. Her first birthday came and went. What did I see? Those who knew and loved the family were left with their questions. They asked themselves and each other, what did I miss? But Zoe's mother did not come back for her. Chapter 1. 1 year later. Someone else was already there. Aaron Falk felt faintly, if unreasonably, annoyed as he pulled up next to the other car. The turn-off had been as hard to spot as he remembered, almost swallowed by the bushland towering over both sides of the road. It was so well concealed, in fact, that Falk had blithely assumed that what was waiting at the other end of the track would be his alone. Not so, he could see now as he touched the brake and suppressed a sigh. Falk hadn't been alone there last year either. Greg Rako had been in the passenger seat then, Falk following his friend's directions as they neared the end of their 8-hour drive. Rako had ignored the sat-nav, especially after they crossed the Victorian border into South Australia. His high spirits had been infectious, and they'd chewed through the kilometres, taking turns trading news and picking the music. Rako's newborn son was being christened that weekend, in the same church where Rako and his brothers had been themselves several decades earlier. His wife and 2 kids had already made the trip and were waiting at the other end, but Rako's sergeant duties had held him back. He was clearly keen to be reunited with them, so Falk had been surprised when he'd suddenly leaned forward in the passenger seat, peering at the empty road and pointing to a patch of trees. "You see that break ahead? Turn there." They had still been a good 30 minutes out of town, and Falk could see nothing. The stretch of bushland had looked identical to the rest lining the route. "Where?" "There, mate." Falk had still missed it, and had had to illegally reverse several metres before he saw the single-lane track. He'd eyed the unpaved surface and mentally assessed his car's suspension. "What's at the other end?" "Quick detour," Rako had grinned.